Yo, what's up and welcome to the channel, Shotgun Shogun, and this is what we have been waiting for a while. That's right, the developers' notes. We're going to be getting what the next buffs are, and well, as you can see from the thumbnail and the title, this one's not clickbait this time. That's right, the meme is coming true, right? Haste is getting a buff, but we're gonna see if it's good enough. Briar Iseria, Specimen Sez, Kawarick, Haste, Yuna, Free Spirit, Tyria, which is actually kind of cool. Silk, who even knows what she does. Kawazu and Captain Rickorous, which I'm interested because I mean I'm a big fan of the Captain Rick picks. But we're also getting an upgrade to Flower Shower, which is free. So it's nice that they're buffing Free Spirit Tyria because, well, she's a free plus 15 unit for new players that's going to help you get through a lot of stuff. But let's get into these changes. So Briar Witch Iseria, previously Witch's Curse, increased hit chance by 25 to 35%. Successful attack inflicted additional damage. Additional damage increases proportion to the caster's attack. It's going to do the exact same thing, but this time upon receiving lethal damage, grants immortality to the caster for 1 turn, and this can be used every 5 turns, which is pretty solid actually, because you could build her bruiser, right, and put her with some sustain. I can see her actually being built as kind of a bruiser, like high damage, high damage bruiser, right? And every 5 turns you just can't kill her, so that gives you a chance to heal her up, things along those lines. So that could be very, very good. Not only that, but I mean, this does give her some extra survivability. Now, Curse Thorn, previously this is her S3, right? Attacks all enemies with a Cursed Thorn Bush, dispelling all buffs by up to 85%, which was one of the big complaints, right? A lot of these units that are supposed to strip, supposed to put debuffs on, were only 85%. And so now you have up to 100% chance to, you dispel all buffs, 100% chance to put on decrease attack and make them unbuffable for 2 turns. So this is a huge, huge change. You can build her very much like a mid-effectiveness bruiser character. You'll want her to go potentially after buffs, things like that. I don't think that I think with these changes actually you don't necessarily need her as an opener, although that would be pretty solid. You can use her as an alternative Bazaar that puts on the unbuffable and the attack down, which is pretty big, right? Because with Bazaar, even afterwards, you can potentially still clear everybody out. So the attack down is going to make you a little bit more sustainable, things like that. So you do still have to deal with the 15%, right? But now you don't have to deal with, well, 2 15%. Because previously it was 85% and then 15%, right? Obviously. So Briar Witch Iseria will be adjusted so that she's more influential on the battlefield. First, Witch's Curse will be modified to grant immortality for 1 turn upon receiving lethal damage, making her more likely to hold out the initial phase of the battle. Additionally, it's now going to have 100% max chance to decrease attack and make all enemies unable to be buffed, dragging opponents into disadvantageous situations at a higher chance. We will see her, she's going to be more of a control unit that brings supplemental damage, in my opinion, and that seems to be like kind of what they're going with, right? The fact that you do have basically the drink proc on all of your attacks is really big, and it scales with attacks, so you can forgo the crit and crit damage and work on like speed, bulk, attack, and effectiveness. That's something that you can work on here, and then just bank on like a supplemental attack damage with her. So we'll see. I did see her getting some play, but we'll see if this buff gets her more play. Specimen Sez, somebody who you haven't seen in a long time, right? Dreamy Iron Mace. So this previously attacks with Iron Mace with 50% chance to stun for 1 turn. Upon successfully stunning the enemy, now this is going to increase your combat readiness of the caster by 25%. So that's going to be pretty big. You're going to be able to cycle very big if you're stunning, right? 50% chance. Well, I mean, anything that's not a 100% chance is a 50% chance. Anyways. Evil Claws. Before, attacked all enemies with Evil Claws with a 45% chance to stun for 1 turn before increasing the combat readiness of the caster by 50%. Now it's going to be 60% chance to stun. Combat readiness still the same. Damage dealt is increased. So this is going to be a bit decent. This is going to be decent. We'll see how much the damage increase is and if it's worth. Now, Light Storm. This is his S3. Previously, attacks with the Light Storm, inflicting extinction and resetting the cooldown on this skill when the enemy is defeated, penetrates defense by 30 or 100% when the enemy is stunned. So it's going to do all the same stuff. But if this skill is available when an ally, except for the caster, is attacked, it has a 20% chance to counterattack. That's a built-in Elbrus Ritual Sword. Maxed out Elbrus Ritual Sword. Just in it. So that's actually pretty solid. You're going to be able to get counterattacks via the Elbrus, right? Previously I'd seen people running this like counterattack set like Bruiser Spez. Maybe we'll see a resurgence in that. Maybe I will play a resurgence in that because I have a plus 15 triple S Specimen Sez that has been collecting dust. So maybe we'll slap him in a counterattack set and see how that does. I think this is kind of interesting. Additional improvements into Specimen Sez's skills will be applied in this balance adjustment as many heirs have requested. Specimen Sez has demonstrated his performance overpowering enemies by penetrating enemy defense by 100%. However, it has been challenging for our heirs to design the right conditions or team combinations with Specimen Sez to show in which Specimen Sez can show his competence. With this adjustment, Specimen Sez will continuously contribute to battle even in the early phase when it's not his turn. Also, he is now expected to take his turn more frequently. We expect to see slightly ease considerable factors for heirs to form team combinations. First, with the skill Light Storm can be used each time an ally, except for the caster, is attacked. It will have a 20% chance to counterattack with the basic skill. So this is going to be pretty good. There's also a lot of characters that come in. You can run him with Cerise, right? Not only that, but if you get the double up, stun, CR push, he's going to be getting more and more turns. So I can see maybe like a mid-speed Bruiser Spez. You want him to be a little bit thick so that he doesn't just immediately die. And he's going to be stunning. Put him in with an A Tywin too, and it's the rise of Bruiser control in my opinion. So we'll see how he does. Realistically, the thing too is not only can he work as a pseudo control with the stuns, things like that, but if you do get a stun, he's going to be able to bring the damage that a lot of control teams very much lack. Things like, if you go full control, the problem is the moment that they slip out, they kill you because you don't have the damage to follow up. So I think that Bruiser control, the A Tywins, the Cerises, Mui might see a little bit more play. You have a lot of these units that are coming in, they're debuffing, counterattack, Dizzy. The problem is you're going to need some sort of strip, right? Because a lot of people are going to just start bringing in debuff or cleansers, debuff immunity, stuff like that. But even cleansers, once you get to a certain point in frenzy, they're gonna get stunned too. An A Momo can only last so long before she's running up against somebody who can absolutely stun her. So we'll see. Kawarick, now nobody uses Kawarick except for Foe on my Discord. That's probably the only person in the game who actually uses him on a regular basis. But previously, Dimensional Corridor, Awakened, draws the enemy into subspace and attacks with a 75 to 100% chance to dispel one buff before increasing skill cooldown by 1 turn twice. Increases speed of the caster for 2 turns. Damages increases in proportional to the target speed. They're going to make it 2 debuffs or 2 buffs. That way you're not hard stuck by an FCC, right? That seems to be what they typically do. They just go, oh, okay, now you can get rid of 2 buffs because otherwise I just go FCC and what are you gonna do? You can't get rid of both of the buffs. So anyways, Dimensional Explosion, Previously, locks all enemies within subspace before triggering an explosion, penetrates defense by 30%. When the caster is granted increased speed, damage dealt is increased proportional to the caster's speed. Now, attacks all enemies with an explosion, silencing for 1 turn before granting stealth to the caster for 2 turns, and penetrates defense by 30%. So this is going to be really good, and it's going to up his survivability, right? That stealth is huge. Not only that, against AoE teams, it reduces a lot of the damage that he would be potentially taking. Stealth is really big. It'll still be interesting to see if this gets any play. Kawarick will be adjusted in terms of his overall use. First, upon using Dimensional Corridor, we already talked about that. You can find it easier when facing enemies with more than one buff. Furthermore, conditional defense penetration on Dimensional Explosion will be applied by default. Okay, yeah, they took away the requirement for speed, so it's just 30% defense pen. When in doubt, defense pen it out. That's kind of their buff for a lot of things, right? So yeah, and I mean that is on all enemies too, so that's pretty big. Inflict silence, grants stealth, 30% defense pen. That's going to be pretty solid, actually. So he's going to be able to pop in, silence everybody, so in case if you don't have, like, you know, a Dizzy that attacks all enemies, or like a Yuna, or maybe a Cizerato to, you know, potentially trigger that, you're gonna have a bad time. So especially if you're silenced. Well, you can't silence Cizerato, but regardless, the 1 unit, right? So I think that this will definitely help him out. I think that's going to be really interesting. Now, the one that everybody has been clamoring for, let's see if this is good enough. Now, Envoy's Scythe, before attacks with an enormous scythe with a up to 50% chance to inflict 2 bleeds. Now it's going to have a 70% chance to inflict 2 bleeds and steals 1 buff if the target is an Earth Elemental hero. That's interesting. They're doing the same thing with Carmine Rose with the whole, oh hey, if you're an Earth hero, I get extra stuff. I think that this is kind of interesting. The buff steal is something that I very much like from ML Rin. So this could be very interesting. We're seeing, you know, more grass units. You see Alencia, you see Landy. You're going to potentially see Destina and Ray if control comps start, you know, seeing a resurgence and stuff. So this definitely can help out in terms of stealing stuff. Blood Rend, now previously attacks by spinning an enormous scythe, making the enemy unhealable and inflicting vampiric touch for 2 turns, and recovers the health of all allies. Now, I personally really like this skill because it's unique, right? The vampiric touch is super interesting, but now the amount recovered increases proportional to the damage dealt, and increases by an additional 50% when the enemy is bleeding. They're now just going to amount increases proportional to the damage dealt. Conditional increases to amount recovered is now applied by default, so the additional 50% is just straight in there. You don't have to worry about them bleeding. Now, one of the problems that Haste has is bleed is kind of not that great, right? And I think that that's one of the big things that holds him back in a lot of content. Had his bleeds been burns for that extra damage, would have been great, but bleeds, not the best. But let's see what they did to Vampiric Seal. Previously, attacks all enemies with Envoy's Scythe with a 75% chance each to inflict 3 bleed effects, randomly inflict 3 bleed effects among the enemies for 2 turns. When there are 3 or fewer enemies, damage dealt increases with fewer enemies. So now you have a 100% chance to inflict 3 bleed effects for 2 turns. Not randomly amongst anybody. It's potentially 3 bleeds for 2 turns on everybody. meaning that you strip into that. That's potentially 3 bleeds. That is actually okay damage. When there are 3 or fewer enemies, damage dealt detonates any bleeding effects inflicted on earth elemental targets at the end of the turn, meaning that, let's say, boom, you strip, there's a Landy, right? Strip her debuff immunity because she's potentially either on Guiding Light or she is on immunity set, should be on immunity set, and then you follow into haste. That's 3 bleeds, that's damage, potentially big damage, and then detonates at the end of the turn. Now this is going to be pretty good against, obviously, well, Golem, but nobody really does Golem, but this could be very good for burst damage against some of those characters like Alencia, like Falconeer Quarry, like you know, Landy, Charles, potentially, things like that. So I definitely will be interesting to see if people are able to play him. I think that they're gonna potentially be bringing out more grass units because they're buffing some fire units and they're putting in the whole against earth element units stuff, and I think they're testing it to see how they might move that forward in the future. So we will potentially see units in the future that do their stuff, but if they're in an advantageous situation, they're going to do more stuff. So I definitely look forward to seeing just how much he can do here. So haste will be improved, blah blah blah, against earth elementals. Inflict bleeding on his first skill is increased significantly. So I mean, bleed is not that great, but he can put a lot of fucking bleeds on you, and it stacks up over time for sure, especially if you're Gunther too. First, the chance of inflicting bleeding effects upon using Envoy Scythe will be increased, along with additional effect that cause him to steal 1 buff effect if the target is an earth elemental. Furthermore, a conditional increase in the amount recovered by Blood Rend will become unconditional, always maximizing his ability to recover. So you can use him as a pseudo sustainability character. Previously, it could only inflict 3 bleeding effects. However, through this balance adjustment, under the assumption that haste attacks 4 enemies, the chances will become 100%, along with a maximum of 12 bleeding effects, 3 effects on each enemy. Finally, he can detonate those. That's what we were talking about. So that is really, really solid. We'll see what kind of play he gets. I mean, it's really good for PvE, obviously, but again, we'll see what happens here. Now, Yuna, it's just increasing her focus on her her S2, so she's going to get more focus, right? So she's going to get 3 focus this time around. However, her S3 is going to be getting her an extra turn, so this is pretty solid. I really like this because you boom S3 and then you can S1 or S2 again. Anything with extra turns, unconditional extra turns is phenomenal. I mean, it's super good. Anytime you just get a whole extra turn is extra damage and stuff like that. So Yuna will be adjusted in terms of an increase in the focus acquired by using the skill upgrade and by adding an extra turn to her meteor cannon. Through this adjustment, she will be more readily able to gain focus in order to use meteor cannon, and upon using meteor cannon, she can better utilize the additional turn for a cycle of attacks. So boom, meteor cannon into potentially S1, like I said, or potentially S2. Therefore, upon using meteor, blah blah blah, as the attack cycle has been improved for meteor cannon and more focus can be acquired by the additional given turns, we hope our heirs can utilize Yuna. I like it. She's somebody that I've wanted to build for a while. So yeah, there's that. But Free Spirit Tyria, release, so energy wave, release condensed energy at all enemies, recovering health. The cast proportional to the damage dealt. Cooldown of the skill decreased by 1 when the enemy is defeated. Releases this, now it resets the skill when an enemy is defeated. This means that she is going to be amazing for farming for new players. This is really, really solid because now you can potentially just build her to one shot, very, very fast, very, very strong character, dude, because you have that AoE. So look for, like, potentially building this as a dog walker, as a new character or a new player. Not only is she plus 15, she's easy to get, she's easy to imprint. Her artifact is easy to get, very, very solid. So with the cooldown decrease upon defeating the enemy used to be limited to 1 turn. After this balance adjustment, the cooldown would be reset upon defeating the enemy, making it viable for her to use this skill continuously. So that is, yeah, 100%. She can just walk dogs like all day long. Going to be really solid. Silk, so concentration before gains 1 focus at the end of the turn and consumes 1 focus when attacked. When the caster's stack focus is 2 or more, single shot is enhanced into automatic fire, increasing damage dealt. So now gain 1 focus at the start of the turn and consume 1 focus when attacked. Increase combat readiness by 1%. When the caster's stack focus is 2 or more, it's going to be doing the same amount. Storm Arrow is going to be increased damage. So there is that. Silk will be given an increase in combat readiness upon being attacked. Furthermore, the moment that she gains focus via her skill, concentration will be adjusted from the end of the turn to the beginning of the turn, making her more able to take advantage of focus acquired immediately. I don't know how much this is going to change her, but seems pretty good, especially for like a newer player that might be using her on various things. Kawazu, Fire Ricardo. Previously, Flame Strike attacks the enemy with a ball of flame with a 25 to 50% chance to burn for 2 turns. Soul Burn was 100% chance. Now, same thing, but 50% chance to decrease defense for 2 turns instead of the burn. After attacking, has a 35% chance to activate Burning Vitality. That's going to increase combat readiness of the caster by 20%. So a 35% chance to get a 20% push forward. Now if Soul Burn is going to have a 100% chance to decrease defense. So another defense breaker. Took away the burn, added in defense break. So it was all right. That's all right, I guess. Previously, Composure, when the caster is debuffed after being attacked, dispels all debuffs and activates Burning Vitality. Can only be activated once every 3 turns, max 2 turns. Now, when the caster is attacked, this is just going to increase his attack of the caster for 2 turns, and you can only have it every 2 turns. So if you're debuffed, this should theoretically dispel all of your debuffs. And hold on, why do people call me in the middle of filming a video? But should be getting rid of your debuffs, and you should always have attack up if you're going up against something along those lines. Captain Ricorous, everything's the same. He's going to get a 75% chance to restrict for 2 turns on the target that yeah, he's going to get restrict. So restrict is not limited now. I like it. I like Captain Ricorous. Very interesting. Gives you another option for restrict here. So that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. And then the Flower Shower artifact, increase effectiveness by 7% to 14%. When an enemy is defeated, is going to give you an increased attack. So they gave you the same thing. They just increased effectiveness on it. So there you go. There you go. Literally now Luna buffs and Operator Cigarette. Operator Cigarette's fine. I'll have to do a whole T video on this one. But there you go. I think a lot of these are pretty good. We'll see how the haste one is. The Specimen Sez one is super interesting, and I think Briar Iseria is pretty solid in this. So we'll see how it goes. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. I'm always interested. Who do you guys think needs to be in the next buff cycle? And not just from like a, hey, this is my favorite waifu and I don't ever see it used in my meta, but like an actual unit that like really needs help. Now that haste is buffed, is haste the worst one? Oh, and don't say MLEO, because that's probably going to be the first one that everybody goes to, because that would be the first one I would go to. But if you're new here, as always, like, fave, subscribe, comment down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take it easy, homies. Peace.